Hi. I'm Arthur. You know what one of my favorite things in the entirety of 40k is? Dreadnoughts. Yeah, I know, I kinda hit you with a softball early. I mean, you can read the title. It would be kinda funny if I did like a swerve out of nowhere and said like Wraithguard or something. But you know, gotta keep you on your toes. But for real, though, my favorite aspect of the Space Marine army is always going to be the Dreadnought. It's just such a fun concept. I don't think I could name off another fictional setting that has something similar to it. Although it's not exactly a revolutionary concept, but the Dreadnought as a whole is just so fun. So, for those who do not know what a Dreadnought is, I want you to picture Space Marine. He accidentally suffers a teleporter mishap and ends up landing on the planet of blenders and lawnmowers rather than the planet of hugs and kisses. He ends up surviving the ordeal somehow, but has no arms, no legs, and a barely functioning circulatory system. Needs help to breathe as well, just to boot. This man was a hero in his own day, so what do? Well, of course, we are a humane society. We strap him up to a life support system. Gotta preserve all that ancient info, right? But then we strap all that life support stuff into an armored sarcophagus. Gotta make sure the man's is safe, right? So obviously the next logical steps are to fucking lash the man to a massive combat walker body equipped with enough heavy artillery and ordnance to level a fucking city block. It's just to protect him, you know? So jokes aside, if a Space Marine is important enough and they are gravely wounded, they end up in a Dreadnought sarcophagus and lashed into this walking genocide here. There are many different forms of Dreadnoughts, each with their own purposes and reasons for existing. Technically, if you want to break things down, you could say that there's only roughly like 5 or 6 different chassis for Dreadnoughts themselves, and every variant after is just a modified version. And you're right, but I'm going to cover the most major ones and try to give an idea as to what they are, what they do, and what they look like. Starting off, let's cover the boy we just lost, the Caretaker Pattern Dreadnought. The box boy, the OG, the Chaticus Maximus of Dreadnoughts. Hey yo, this guy slaps your girl's ass. What do? Nothing, that's fucking what. Technically, the least complicated Dreadnought chassis, as it's essentially the devolved version of an earlier style of Dreadnought known as the Contemptor Dreadnought. But the Castraferum chassis is what people think about when they think of a Dreadnought. Dreadnoughts are just fucking cool. And these guys are the reason. They have the life support sarcophagus on the front, loud and proud, so the Space Marine can get a good look if he wants to through the viewport in the front. You have usually a combat articulated arm on one side. It basically functions as a power fist, and some light munitions underneath like a storm bolter or a flamer. Then you have some ranged artillery on the other side. Up close or far away, these Dreadnoughts fuck super hard, usually awoken from stasis in times of great need. Which is a point that I should probably add in. In between combat encounters, Dreadnoughts are usually put to sleep in a stasis field, basically frozen until needed, because being a Dreadnought kinda sucks outside of the warfare thing. I mean, you're not able to really hold a book, write, read, and you speak through a megaphone, so conversation's kind of out the fucking window. Regardless, these Dreadnoughts are able to pack a punch so fucking hard that it can sway a war in your favor. Armor plating like a Terminator, a little clunky and awkward to move, but with enough firepower to devastate anything and anyone on the battlefield. Now, the next form of Dreadnought is a modified version of this, called a Hellfire Dreadnought. This Dreadnought is essentially the same thing, but modified targeting systems, and it sacrifices the one close combat arm to add more firepower. Very often a different weapon to cover different, goals, but sometimes 2 of the same munitions just to drive the point home. often equipped with long-range twin-linked las cannon on one side and a missile launcher on the other. This thing will basically kill tanks and large groups of enemies from afar, so it covers all your bases. Next up, the last major different version of the Caretaker pattern dreadnought is called the Siege Dreadnought, or often called the Ironclad Dreadnought. Now, what this dreadnought does is very simple. Let's say there is a wall in your way, and no way out. Let's send in Fuckhands McMike here to make that wall not a thing anymore. Yeah, they are often equipped with... Hi, this is video editor Arthur, getting my way through this video. I went to go re-examine my notes about the weapons that are on the Ironclad Dreadnought, and the next 5-minute segment I had of me discussing the weapons that the Dreadnought had were wrong. So, just to make a quick amendment, yeah, they have the options of a seismic hammer, which is meant to break down walls, and a dreadnought chain fist, which is meant to break open vehicles. I don't know why I thought there was a siege drill, a seismic hammer, and a power fist. I don't fucking... Just enjoy the video. I don't fucking... It looks like a drill, okay? It just looked like a fucking... Or a hurricane bolter, just to make sure you paste whatever the fuck is directly in front of you. And for those of you who don't know what a hurricane bolter is, it's 6 bolt guns duct taped together. Yeah, it's not that complicated, but, it gets the job done. One last note on the Caretaker. There is a few other faction-specific variants, like the Psychic Dreadnoughts of the Blood Angels, the Wolfen Dreadnought for the Space Wolves, and the whatever the fuck the Grey Knights did to this poor man. But you could probably piece together what they are by the name of them. So do with that what you will. Also, I think I'm going to cover the sub-faction-specific stuff later, other than, the generic Space Marine garbo we're doing right now. On to the next dreadnought. We are going thousands of years into the past for this to give you the original design for the best dreadnought, the Contemptor. More resilient, better weaponry, a force field, more maneuverable, and just better all around. The Contemptor Dreadnought was one of the most dangerous things to see on a battlefield, with a similar idea of having a melee weapon in one hand and ranged artillery in the other. This one is pretty dangerous, but also incredibly fucking rare. The Contemptor has very similar variants to the Caretaker, but the main thing is it doesn't have a siege version. There is the pseudo-Hellfire variant that is equipped with 2 massive ranged artillery munitions, but other than that, it's basically the same, but better on all accounts. The melee weapons are stronger, the ranged munitions have more variability and more ease of use, and for the Hellfire version, they have just better guns for longer distance. The reason there isn't a siege version is because of this fucking hunk of a man right here. This is the fucking Leviathan Heavy Siege Dreadnought. This thing will kill everything in front of it in a straight line until there is nothing left to kill, and it will still probably have half its ammunition left. It's ultra heavy armor, force field, its weaponry is more or less where it shines. Its weapons are so powerful that the side munitions for it, the backup guns just in case something gets a little too close, are fucking melta-guns. Which, if you didn't know, are anti-fucking tank guns. You have things like the Cyclonic Melta-Lance that will not only vaporize a tank, but kill the ghosts of the crew inside. The Storm Cannon, which can accurately fire probably a kilometer or 2 away at a pace that would make an SMG scared, but also it probably fires tank shells. And don't even get me started on the fact that its base weapon in melee is a siege drill that can eliminate walls, people, tanks. It'll probably, wipe out ghosts too, if you give it a chance. This is probably one of my favorite dreadnoughts. It's chunky, it's dangerous. The only downside is it's probably the slowest dreadnought of the bunch. Doesn't really have any major variants either. Doesn't really need them. See, just because you're slow doesn't mean anything when you have about a foot worth of very durable metal surrounding you at all times. The last of the ancient Dreadnought chassis is an odd one. It's a heavily modified version of a Contemptor Dreadnought known as a Daredeo Dreadnought, but I affectionately refer to it as the Dorito Dreadnought, just because it sounds the same. It's a formula you're likely familiar with. Basically, same shit as the Hellfire Dreadnoughts before, but significantly more powerful and highly specialized. It has modifications that have been made to, make it better at shooting at a distance. Specifically, a helical targeting system that makes it so that it can be super accurate, but it has to sacrifice its mobility in order to do so. Essentially, it is a mobile firing platform that sets up, stays where it's at, and fires incredibly strong munitions. From autocannons to rend through heavy infantry, to las cannons to rip through tanks, to whatever the fuck Volkite does. As I mentioned, the only major downside is it can't move while it's shooting. Oh, and 2, it has no major melee ability other than, probably kicking, which, for a Dreadnought isn't that bad of a thing. The last Dreadnought chassis that we technically have has technically 4 major variants that are important to discuss, so let's break it down. Firstly, the Dreadnought in question is very divisive, as it is the first new Dreadnought chassis created in lore in thousands of years, and it's technically a teensy bit of tech heresy. So there is that. Basically, Belisarius' call decided new Space Marines, and thus there were new Space Marines. New Space Marines need new gear, and obviously they need a shiny new Dreadnought. So what happened? He makes the Redemptor Dreadnought chassis. The basic Redemptor can be seen as a half step forward from the Castroferrum Pattern Dreadnought and a half step behind the Contemptor Dreadnought. It's big and bulky, loud, not super duper sophisticated, but it is very functional, with more articulation and more maneuverability than the Castroferrum Dreadnought. It is a good middle ground of quality, difficult to produce, but devastating to use on the battlefield. It is equipped with several different weapons that will cause untold destruction, like the Macroplasma Incinerator and the Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon on the shooting side of things, and if you couldn't tell what they do by looking at them, sorry, they're pretty self-explanatory. And on the other side, you have the traditional Dreadnought Power Fist. It's a good all-rounder, more armored and tough than the Castroferrum, but less than the Contemptor. It can move more and do more than the Castroferrum, but is significantly more resource-heavy to maintain and produce. I think they're neat. Then you have the modified versions of this chassis. The first one to talk about is pretty easy to understand. It's called the Brutalis Dreadnought, and it very much does what its name implies. It's a heavy melee dreadnought that can have either twin fists or twin claws, each with radically different purposes for anti-melee and anti-tank. But regardless, it's very effective at murdering everything in close range. It is a walking blender. I have one. They're fucking scary. There isn't much lore about them yet, as they are the second newest dreadnought to come, but they have their specialized purpose for fighting anything up close, and I respect that. Then, on the opposite end, you have the newest dreadnought to come out, which is the Ballistis Dreadnought. Same deal as the Hellfire Dreadnought before. It is equipped with a heavy las cannon and a missile launcher for very devastating range combat. This dreadnought, as of me writing this, is actually not out, as it's coming out in the Leviathan box, which, if my calculations are correct, should be soon. Looks cool. Does the same thing as the other Hellfire variant dreadnoughts up to this point. This one just seems Redemptor-y. Okay, one last one to cover, and we only cover it through technicality, because some fucking egghead 3000 IQ gigabrain decided that maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't just save the heavy artillery walking battle tank mech for the wounded. So they hollowed out a Redemptor chassis, reduced the armor on it, leaving it light and quiet, modifying it to have less noise and rubberized joints. Now you have the Invictor Tactical Warsuit, a stealth and recon heavy weapons platform, with a pistol that is a heavy bolter, which I think is hilarious, but instead it is not a wounded dude piloting it, but someone just in Phobos armor piloting it, which is kind of cool. You know, they're moving on. They understand that maybe having people piloting a mech robot is cool. It's weird that they're supposed to be stealthy though, but they do work a lot for Vanguard units deployed in dangerous areas. Equipped with lighter artillery to make up for the lacking strength, it still has access to a really heavy flamer known as an Incendium cannon, and the same kind of power fist equipped on other dreadnoughts. It also has access to a specific kind of autocannon that is unique to it. So, with that, for the entirety of the Space Marine roster, that's kind of all of them. As I mentioned, there are more faction-specific variants that exist, but those are neither here nor there. I think dreadnoughts are going to be my favorite part of the Space Marine army no matter how long I play this game for. I think they are iconic in design, each and every one of them in their own way, of course. But what do you think? I want to know what your general reception is of these dreadnoughts are, because I know it can be a bit different from person to person. Do you like the Redemptor, or maybe you just like Eldar Warwalkers because you have no friends? Either way, let me know in the comments. I'm going to be reading this one because dreadnoughts are one of my favorite topics to discuss. Alongside that, I just want to thank my channel members for supporting me and making sure that when I'm grievously injured, the dreadnought I'm interred into isn't bad. Listen, the channel membership joke isn't always going to hit. Please be kind to me. And before I go, I just want to say obligatory Rylanor the Ancient comment here. There. I brought him up. I hope you're happy.